Hello there, RuneScape community! Today I'm going to be doing a video for you that'll give you a brief tutorial about the RuneScape Evolution of Combat update coming up soon. I'll do a few parts, probably 5 to 7 of them, explaining some of the biggest changes to RuneScape in this game via this update, and kind of hopefully help you out a little bit if you're new to it or haven't experimented much with it, because there's a lot going on here, and I really want to help you guys get a hold of it. So some of the things we're going to cover are chatting, very basically. The new weapons. We'll cover abilities. There's been some changes to the prayers, how to handle teleports and everything, and I'll give you some other general basic ideas. The first thing I'd like to talk to you guys about will have to be the Taskbar Interface, that's this thing here, and chatting. Now, things have changed a little bit in terms of chatting. As most of you know, in the classic game, you would simply type whatever you wanted to say to the community and press enter, and I mean, obviously there's pressing tab to go to friends and stuff, and all of that is still active. However, it's changed a little bit, and that this task interface has made some of the things in RuneScape much easier to do. You can put abilities, spells, almost generally anything you want to on there. You can set it to drop fish, you can set it to drink a potion, you can even set it to alchemy, or do an ability of your choice. It's pretty amazing. And then, you don't even have to click them to activate that. You can press any of the buttons on the corresponding number right here on your keyboard, and it'll perform that action. Now, I don't have anything specifically set right now to show you this, but if you press, for instance, fighting a goblin or something, and you want to do the charge, you would simply set your target by using this handy little button over here. You'd find a target, such as where is a little noob goblin, right here. And then you're going to click this, set target, and then you're going to use this ability, and it will charge them. For some reason I can't reach it, but yeah. So if I wanted to do it, I could simply press 3, and I'll do it instead of having to click the ability. Now, I kind of lagged, but you get the general idea. Something else that has changed is, since there's this whole new basis of pressing buttons for that, to actually chat to the community, you must first press enter once, then you start chatting as you normally would, such as me spamming the Grand Exchange as I usually do when I'm GEscape. All the other normal rules apply, such as pressing enter the first time, then you do 2 dashes for your clan, 3 dashes for a guest, and 1 dash for a friend chat. The tab button still works without you having to press the enter button first, so you can talk to your friends rather easily that way. This is pretty amazing by Jagex because it has really set things up to allow you to do things faster, such as with fishing or mining. We all know how persnickety and tedious it can be to right-click and drop everything in your inventory. With this system, all you have to do is press a few buttons, and you drop your entire inventory in 1/10 of the time. It's pretty amazing, if you ask me. Another one of the largest updates, although kind of subtle but pretty important to understand, are the changes to the prayers. And there have been some added things, some things changed, and some things even removed. Now, what I'm talking about are, if you go to your normal prayers, you'll see that Rigor and Augury, which were commonly available through buying them in Dungeoneering skill with tokens, are now free, and they're basically a, piety equivalent for free for ranged and magic. Now, one of the biggest changes that I think most people have a problem with in this update is that the protection prayers only offer 50% protection. Now, there's 2 sides to this in that, on one hand, how are you supposed to handle some things in terms of, like, aberrant specters and other monsters that are hard to fight without that full protection? Now, what I think is important to know is, in this system, it's really become so much about the combat triangle that if you use the correct gear, you could probably get by without even using the protection prayers. It's all about how you gear, and it's a new game, and you have to learn to do some new things. So I think it's time to give it a chance. And I think you'll find that if you actually try it, the 50% doesn't affect it too terribly. One thing I'm not on my curses right now, so I can't show you this, but I think this is a great update, is that 95 prayer, if you've unlocked curses, you don't just get Turmoil. You also get another curse that's a Turmoil equivalent for magic, and a third curse that is an equivalent to Turmoil for ranged training. So I think that one's been requested for a long time, and I think Jagex really came through on that part, and I really think the prayers are different, but they've been done in a good way. I'd now like to take a couple of minutes to talk about the massive weapon updates that have been done to the system. As you may notice, I am wielding in-game, as you probably realize, a Bandos Godsword. I am not holding it like that little awkward side swivel hip motion, but instead holding it in a position you'd probably see someone wearing it, such as over their shoulder, and I can even change between one of two different things by pressing this toggle sheath button and wear it across my back. I think this adds a lot more reality to the game, as you're not going to hold a lot of the weapons you currently do in the way you do currently in the game. One of the probably most demanded updates in the history of RuneScape has finally been realized here in dual wielding. This means wielding weapons in both hands rather than being reserved specifically for a two-hand weapon or a shield in one spot. You can still do a two-hand weapon, and you can still use a shield in one hand. But as you can see, I have in my inventory a dragon longsword and a offhand dragon longsword. An offhand weapon goes in your left hand and is usually weaker than its right hand counterpart, but counts as a weapon that you can actually do damage with rather than having to use a shield or something like that. Now, you cannot dual wield two-handed weapons, but I will show you with these dragon longswords as I think it's very cool. Once again, there's a toggle sheath button for this as well, so you can hold them in pretty cool ways. It's pretty amazing when you think about it. This update has been seen on the forums requested for years of RuneScape history, and I commend Jagex for finally realizing it. You can now dual wield crossbows as well as other things. However, bows still retain their two-handship, and there are different kinds of crossbows. There are light and heavy still retain almost a two-handed aspect of ranging, while light or they're called bullet. A bullet crossbow will be allowed to be wielding as two. One of the largest rework and redesigns that has been done with this latest Evolution of Combat update has been the change of what this icon has always been as called the Spellbook for only magic. It is now called the Ability Book, and it houses your abilities for all skills, as well as your spells for original magics. Now, to handle magics, to find your old spells, you're going to go to the magic icon, as you probably would assume. Now, this first screen interface is for your magic abilities. Those aren't going to be what you want right away, so then you have separated categories, such as here are your combat spells, here are your teleport spells, and here are your skilling spells, such as alchemize or other things like enchant. Now, I think this makes things almost even smoother. There was always a little bit of an organized, but this just makes things really clean. Now, one thing that's nice, I'll bring up once again the taskbar, and in case I know I didn't bring this up earlier, so I'll bring it up now. You can even set multiple different taskbars, so you aren't stuck with just one. You can have one, for instance, I usually have one of melee abilities, and then you can have one of all teleports. Now, basically, you cast them the same exact way. You cast it, and you go somewhere like Varrock or somewhere else. One of the other major changes that's been done to the game in this latest Evolution of Combat update coming up is things have changed in terms of how armors are given their stats, and there's also an extra bonus effect I will talk about that is similar to an armor that is current in Live RS, at least at the time this video is making, but unique to only those armors. Now, if I go to the equipment screen, you'll see that things are a little bit different. They're not organized as basically into attack, strength, defense, magic, ranged, and all of these. You have a very specific set of how much damage you're doing in your main hand, right here, your offhand, your accuracy with that weapon, what chance you have of getting a critical, the type. Now, that's another thing that's changed about weapons specifically, is that weapons don't have different options for doing different types of attack. They're very basic in that method now, in that weapons are either slash, stab, crush. They have one method, and that's it. Now, some of you may be thinking right away, as has always been seen, a different method usually meant different types of experience. Now, one thing you'll notice here, you can train, with a melee weapon at least, any type of skill you want to. This means you can train strength with a whip, or any other combination you could possibly think of, controlled with a dragon scimitar. I mean, it's been asked for a long time. Now, I will go back here, and I will show you the other effect. Well, first of all, also one of the other things about this update is the combat triangle. As you know, magic is effective on melee, melee is effective on ranged, and ranged is effective on magic, is much more in play in this update. For instance, you will see the effectiveness of the armor I'm wearing in terms of how well I can defend and how well I can attack against certain types. I think this is great. You can even examine things to find out what their exact weaknesses are. And I think that adds a whole new element to the game. You don't just tank something, you have to try and strategize a little bit. Now, what I was talking about earlier with the unique to one type of armor now is the health boosting effect that in LiveRS at the time this video was made is specific to your Virtus, Pernix, and Torva armors from Nex. Now, in Evolution of Combat, all armors boost your health, so my base health without any armor is still 990, but my Bandos raises that up further to around 7,000. This is pretty helpful as hits have been pretty dramatically increased. With some abilities, I've been able to hit 6,000 on NPCs. That's amazingly high. That's never been seen in almost any type of other attack. So it really changes the way you need to plan. Now, don't go selling everything right away because it doesn't boost to the same levels. As is appropriate, Bronze is not going to boost you as high as Bandos is. And armors such as Torva, Virtus, Pernix still retain the highest bonuses. The better the armor, the better the health increase. Now some people are thinking about that since Baro's armor is better than Bandos in this update, that will change. That is correct that Baro's will become better than Bandos, but in some aspects. Bandos retains a higher health boost and also retains its prey and strength that is unique to it over Baro's. It also won't degrade. Well, I certainly hope that this has been a little helpful tutorial, and I'm sorry it dragged on, but there's a lot to be said for the Evolution of Combat. A lot of people will say that they're quitting the game, or that it's a horrible update, and I will admit, there are some very dramatic changes to the way this game is played, and it is definitely almost an entirely different game from the RuneScape we've grown to love and get used to. But I don't think that means the game is bad. I think you should give this game an opportunity to show you all that Evolution of Combat has to offer, and you may very well just start liking it. You may start liking it. Jagex has taken lots of time and listened to all the players who've been playing the beta to try and really make this as good and come to a common ground between what the players want to see and this great, amazing update. It's very complex, and if you have questions, I'm sure almost anybody would be glad to answer questions. And, you should really try it, and just maybe go on a beta account, or maybe just go on during the weekends when anybody can play. I would really recommend trying it, and I think there's a lot to be said about it, and I don't think you could in any way say that it is a completely horrible update. I think if you try it, you'll probably grow pretty fond of it. And I hope this helped. And thank you for watching. Leave comments, and I'll be trying for certain to answer any questions you have as best as I can, at least. And I'm sure a lot of other people will too.